Well, I got nothing. Um, I've been doing administrative work mostly, so nothing special to talk about. But if some people have some questions or something they want to talk about, I'm all open. Hopefully, in next month, some things might get done so that I can talk about them. But right now, they're still in progress, being worked on. So, Daniel, if you have any questions, please.
No, I've been doing mostly administrative work myself. So I
So you
haven't,
now understand. Yes,
yes.
yes. Um, the what I'm hoping gets done that kind of would be interesting and sort of along my lane. Um, we are we're basically have a early beta version of read-only S3 driver code that's now using Amazon's own C library for communicating with S3. So we decided to replace our custom code with working with S3 with the Amazon's library. So that's, again, literally yesterday I got it working on my laptop. And so still too early to, see where it goes, but hopefully that will give some better interface and better capabilities working with S3 going forward. And also apparently can help us handle all these AWS environment variables, configuration files, all the things for essentially free. So that's in the works. What's also in the works is planning to increase the dataset chunk cache. Currently it's 1 MB by default. And so I suggested that it gets up to 8 MB, which means that applications will not have to specifically increase the chunk cache. Again, obviously, if you want something more, then yes, but the 1 MB will perhaps go away. And I have another person working on related to read-only S3 driver, also changing the default file page cache. That's one of the features of the library if the HDF5 file is cloud optimized. So right now that cache is 0. Again, it expects applications to sort of configure the library, if you will. And we're trying to change that, and now the library will have a non-zero that cache size. I also suggested that to be 64 MB. We'll see how it goes. So if someone is using a ROS3 driver, the library will immediately have this page cache non-zero, so that, again, applications don't have to do that unless if they want something more, they'll have to do it. But by default, there will be non-zero value. And I mean, the whole point where I'm going at is that really makes the library a bit smarter out of the box when working with HDF5 files in the cloud. What else would be something else about read-only driver, but I currently cannot remember.
You get any news about anybody, any serious interest about doing a Rust interface to HDF library? It seems
I
like
have not heard.
not you. Okay, you haven't heard anything. Okay. Yeah, Quincy sent me a link a couple weeks ago, a couple of sessions ago. It turned out that that project is basically dead. Somebody else looks like they're trying to restart it. But I don't know. I can't really tell.
Yes, the that's all. As far as I know, the company doesn't have, and I don't think anyone from the Rust side of things contacting the company ever. I haven't heard. Maybe I'm
Yeah.
wrong. But no, it'd be
Yeah.
nice. I think Rust is very cool.
Yeah, unfortunately, these newer languages don't tend to support multi-dimensional arrays, at least from, as a core object. Sometimes you can add them, I guess, as a library, but since HDF5 is supposed to, the whole point is to really be able to handle multi-dimensional arrays. It's nice if the language can actually support it, even if you're not doing heavy mathematics. If you're just trying to manipulate files and reorganize subset, you really want to be able to handle the multi-dimensional arrays easily.
I agree. I mean, but remember, Python was, my PhD thesis supervisor was into Python when I was using MATLAB back in the day. And I remember he said, "Oh, Python is, a new language, might get something interesting." And I looked at it and said, "Nah, another scripty kind of looking language." And now when NumPy came along, suddenly everything changed.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah.
They figured out how to add that functionality to Python using the existing syntax, and I think it can be done with some other ones, but it has to work reasonably well.
Yeah, so I expect that Rust might have something, because seeing what NumPy meant to Python as a language and everything, I cannot believe that in Rust community someone does say, "Oh, we want that." But maybe it's still too early.
Yeah.
What's now Rust? I think read recently, like just 10 years, 10th anniversary of Rust. I guess it takes another, only in the second decade things really start to pick up.
Right.
Yeah. But Rust, I think, has a lot of, going back to Python, there are a bunch of tools now written in Rust for Python that really are tremendously useful and helpful in the Python ecosystem, which is very interesting to me. It's like quite interesting symbiosis that I didn't expect. So hopefully, Joe, Larry, you guys have anything we can discuss? Although we can do that internally, but now since it's called the doctor session.
Yeah, I'm sitting here because I was looking at a JPSS file, which and the one that I have here has, I think, well, it has 120-ish data sets in the file. One of them is 10,000 to between 10 and 100,000 megabytes. No, not megabytes, bytes. So one large 13, 1,000 to 10,000 sizable. Three of them 100 to 999, and 103 between 10 and 99 bytes. So and it's probably up to the application to, I don't know if you want 103 8 megabyte caches for those 103 tiny data sets. You probably want to set that to the size of the data set or something. I don't, if you're just reading them and not, you know what I mean? So, I mean, your bigger default probably makes sense, but then people should pay attention. I know we had an issue from the Australian Meteorological Society several years ago, because they wanted on a small machine to keep 2,400 files open. So with the first thing they did was set the cache to 0, the data set cache to 0. They still had problems with running out of memory on the machine. So then the next step was to set the metadata cache to 32K instead of whatever the whatever the default or the or whatever happened, but and then that they were able to do that. But the problem was with 2,400 files open and the data sets open, it takes a lot of memory. That's a kind of an extreme case, but that's what came to mind when you said go from 1 to 8. And it's probably a matter of documentation.
You're right. I mean, there is no simple answer, and obviously, I assume there will be someone who assumed that there was no problem before when they kept 2,000 data sets open at the same time.
Yeah.
But here is what another side is. Where this came as a problem was that now the library is kind of buried in the software stack. So there are layers and layers of software in between the actual application that the user is thinking about and where the library is. And passing all the specificities of the HDF5 configuration all the way through all these layers to the library are questionable. And so, because you don't have anymore the library and the user application, that closeness and is gone for many places. Now you have my analysis there is a convention, something, then there is a bunch of other things, then there it may become the library. And so in that situation, now you depend on these layers who previously just assumed that library works because it's in a file system, who cares? This is really sideways things for us. Never really opened up the channels of communication. And that's what happened when people started to explore cloud optimized HDF5 files. And for those files, you really cannot work with 16 kilobyte chunks.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what was the issue. And now I know that NISAR, who is, I guess, within weeks of launch or something, I mean, my understanding is very close to launching things. If they, and as far as I know, they adopted cloud optimized HDF5 files as from the get-go, they will have 2 megabyte chunks. And so you're risking now that someone not aware of the chunk cache size or not being able to reach library and set the chunk cache size, he's suddenly going to have a lot of problems.
Mm-hmm.
And so how you basically combine those two things? That's I think is the problem. And so I think it would be nice to know, for example, when the library adopted 1 megabit chunk cache, what was the memory size of computers, conventional ones and whatnot at that time. And now if we could scale up and say, well, it's 1 megabyte back then, what would, like inflation sort of thing, like inflation dollars. Like, okay, 1 megabyte back in the day, how many megabytes is this today compared to the typical computers? That would be helpful to know, for example. But yeah, so who knows? I mean, it's up for the discussion, but I usually tend to work with people who get very surprised with how much HDF5 library expects to be configured. If you're kind of getting out of the typical file system, conventional computer environment. And I don't know what is the really best way to do it. One idea is these configuration files of the library that you have literally some friendly human readable configuration format, and you basically set those settings. And so maybe that's one option, but that doesn't exist yet. So all right. Anything else?
So, Alexander,
Go.
you talk about ECIP summer meeting, HDF session. Was it approved or not? Yeah.
No.
No.
They have not approved. So I proposed an ECIP session, but My understanding is if they have, what is, I think May 29, I think is what they said, or May 30 is when they're going to announce. Typically they used to accept, but who knows? But yeah, this is going to be session. They offer 60 and 90 minutes, so we'll see what do we get. 2 years ago, I got 60 minutes. Last year, I got 90 minutes. I think since I'm going to be the only person from the company attending, 60 minutes should probably be enough. But yeah, if we get that session, we will. I'll talk more about these enhancements to the library. Hopefully, by the time in end July, well, the things I talked earlier at the beginning will actually be at least in the develop branch, so I could show. And also I expect to have a slide on OpenDepth server and HDF4 and HDF5 data access through it and all that stuff that our Ken Yang is helping to develop, or developing basically. I think he's the main person. So yep, that's where we are. So hopefully next month I'll have something more, and then we'll see where it takes us. And I remember the last thing I want to say about ROS3 driver, and I cannot remember. That really annoys me now. I don't know what. Oh yes, it's not related to ROS3, but close. I'm also hoping that we will accept now the S3 normal typical URIs for S3 objects, that you won't have to need to provide this long sausage of an actual HTTP URL for an S3 object. So that's also that was close to, I think, get implemented, but then when we decided to switch to the Amazon S3 library, then it's delayed now. We are waiting on the library, this S3 library, to sort of get settled in, and then slowly we'll build up the other things around it. And when that happens, I think the next step will be that our tools like H5 dump or H5LS and all that kind of stuff, they don't have to again expect that you tell it, oh, use the ROS3 driver when you supply an S3 URI as a file name, because it's like, duh, it's obvious. Unless we have one more, in other words, either two or more drivers for S3. ROS3 is the only driver, so why force people to specify it? You know, like we don't specify. Oh, you want to open a file in the file system. Oh, you have to specify the driver for it. We don't do that. So why should S3 be any different? So I think that's going to be the next also step in this kind of little customizations and smoothing of logical normal behavior when working with HDF5 files in something like S3. But fundamentally, I mean, the biggest problem remains all these HDF5 files that exist now are really not cloud friendly. And I don't know how that can easily be addressed. The fact that NISAR will begin with cloud optimized files from the get-go is huge, because I think they're going to be like I think like their projection, like in 3 years, there'll be more NISAR data than all the previous NASA satellite missions combined. I mean, some really crazy large number. And suddenly you can have in 3 years more cloud optimized HDF5 files in NASA holding. But on the other hand, all the other files, what you do with them, you can't easily make them cloud friendly unless they are kind of repackaged. And I don't know what's going to be the solution there. ISET2 is supposedly, I think release 7 is supposedly going to come with cloud optimized files as well. But I don't know when that release 7 is scheduled. I lost contact with that group about a couple of months ago. So I'm out of topics, and we managed to survive 20 minutes, which counts as a cup of coffee in a cafeteria. So unless there are other questions or any other thoughts, I'm open. Or any other suggestions, I'm all ears regarding, obviously, the library or HDF software. That's what we can maybe try to do something about.
So
All
one-
right.
oh.
Go ahead.
Well, one thing that came up in our internal discussions for Scott's talk at Hug 25 was the defaults for the library. So he'll probably ask you to make, well, yeah, he'll need a slide for that, but that'll be something that'll be discussed a little bit more at that event. And then there will be roundtables for people to talk more about those as well at Hug. And I'll drop the link in the chat, and it will be in the recording description if anyone wants to join.
Yeah, I mean, I would really be interested to know if there is any other thoughts about the increasing the size.
Okay, that might be, yeah. You might add that to Scott's notes on that, or the PowerPoint too. But yeah, everyone's invited to come and give their feedback during the 2 roundtables on Monday and Tuesday at that event. All right, well, thank you, Alexander. There's nothing.
Thanks.
All right, we should have a guest speaker, Luke Logan from IIT next week. So I'll post that on the forum with more information. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.